I found the stack of driver's licenses hidden behind the bathroom mirror on my 178th day in apartment 4B. 12 faces staring back at me, 12 names I didn't recognize, and every single lease stamped with the same move-in and move-out dates, exactly 6 months apart. The last one had my landlord's signature. The date was 3 days from now. Welcome to Nick's Scary Stories. Tonight's tale comes from a building in downtown Modesto where the rent is suspiciously cheap and the turnover is suspiciously exact. The apartment was perfect when I first saw it. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, huge windows overlooking J Street. $800 a month in an area where studios went for $1,200. The landlord, Mr. Chen, barely looked at my application. "When can you move in?" he asked before I'd finished the tour. I should have wondered why he seemed so eager. I should have asked why the previous tenant left in such a hurry that their coffee mug was still in the sink, half full and growing mold. The first month was normal. I unpacked, set up my home office, learned the building's rhythms. Mrs. Alvarez in 4A played gospel music every Sunday morning. The couple in 4C fought in hushed, angry whispers at 2 a.m. The guy in 4D, I never saw him, but I heard his door open and close at exactly 6:47 a.m. and 6:47 p.m. like clockwork. Have you ever lived somewhere that felt too good to be true? That was 4B. Perfect. Quiet. Cheap. Wrong. Month 2, I started finding things. A hairbrush in the heating vent with blonde hair, my hair is black. A prescription bottle behind the toilet with a name I didn't know, Rebecca Flores, take 1 daily. A leather jacket in the back of the closet, size small, with a dry cleaning tag dated 8 months ago. I asked Mr. Chen about the previous tenants. He waved his hand dismissively. People come and go. Modesto is a transient city. But his eye twitched when he said it. Month 3, the dream started. Always the same. I'd wake at 3:33 a.m., not 3:30, not 3:35, exactly 3:33, with the feeling that someone was standing at the foot of my bed. The room would be freezing, my breath visible in the dark. I'd lie there, frozen, listening to the sound of breathing that wasn't mine. Slow. Steady. Patient. Then, just as suddenly, the cold would lift and I'd be alone again. But in the morning, I'd find wet footprints leading from my bedroom to the front door. Small prints. Barefoot. Not mine. Month 4, I met my neighbor from 3B, an elderly man named Walter who'd lived in the building since 1987. I asked him about apartment 4B. He looked at me with something like pity. "You're the 14th tenant since I moved in," he said. "They all leave around 6 months. Sometimes they tell me they got a job transfer. Sometimes they just vanish. But they all leave the same way, in the middle of the night, no forwarding address, no goodbye." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "And they all look terrified." I started documenting everything. Photos of the footprints. Audio recordings of the 3:33 a.m. breathing. Video of the shadows that moved across my walls when no one was there. I posted in a local Reddit group asking if anyone knew the history of the building at 847 J Street. One person responded, "My sister lived there." 4B, she left after 5 months. Won't talk about what happened. Changes the subject every time I ask. Month 5, things escalated. Objects moved when I wasn't looking. I'd leave my keys on the counter and find them hanging on a hook I never used. My coffee mug would migrate to different rooms. Once, I came home to find every cabinet and drawer in the kitchen open, perfectly aligned, like someone had been searching for something. The footprints appeared more frequently. Sometimes I'd see them forming in real time, invisible feet pressing into the hardwood, leaving wet impressions that faded after a few seconds. The bathroom mirror started fogging up on its own, usually around 3:33 a.m. I'd wake to that sound, breath on glass, and stumble into the bathroom to find the mirror completely fogged except for words written in the condensation: "Leave. Get out. Run. Your time is almost up." I'd wipe them away, but my hand would pass through condensation that felt ice cold and slightly sticky. Like someone had breathed on the glass for hours. Month 5, day 23, I found the licenses. The mirror had fogged again, this time with a new message, look behind. I unscrewed the mirror from the wall and found them taped to the back, 12 California driver's licenses, all different people, all listing 847 J Street, apartment 4B as their address. I recognized one face, Rebecca Flores, the name from the prescription bottle. Her license photo showed a woman in her 30s, dark hair, nervous smile. I googled her name. Missing person report filed 6 years ago. Last known address, my apartment. I laid all 12 licenses on my kitchen table and noticed the pattern. Every tenant moved in exactly 6 months before they disappeared. Every move-in date was the first of the month. Every disappearance happened between the 178th and 180th day. I counted backward from today. I moved in on April 1st. Today was September 26th. Day 178. I had 3 days left. Maybe less. I called Mr. Chen. No answer. I went to his office on the first floor. Locked. Empty. A notice on the door, on vacation, back October 15th. He'd never mentioned a vacation. Through the window I could see his desk, and on it, a stack of papers. Lease agreements. All for apartment 4B. All with future dates. He already had my replacement lined up. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with every light on, watching the door, watching the shadows, counting the hours until sunrise. At 3:33 a.m., the temperature dropped. The lights flickered. And from somewhere inside the walls, I heard it, not breathing this time, but voices. 12 voices. Whispering. Overlapping. Speaking my name. Listen carefully, because this is where it gets worse, the voices came from everywhere and nowhere. They seeped through the walls like water through cracks, surrounding me in stereo whispers that made my skin crawl. I couldn't make out words at first, just the shape of sound, urgent, desperate, angry. I pressed my ear against the wall and the whispers focused into clarity. Get out, get out, get out while you still can. Day 178 is when it starts to see you, really see you, and once it sees you, you can't leave, you can't. I yanked my head back. The wall where I'd pressed my ear was warm. Not room temperature warm. Body temperature warm. Pulsing slightly, like a heartbeat under the paint. I stumbled backward and watched in horror as the paint began to bubble and split. Something was pushing through from the other side. Not breaking through. Emerging. Like the wall was a membrane and something was being born through it. I ran to the front door. Locked. The deadbolt turned freely but the door wouldn't budge, sealed tight against the frame. I pulled until my hands ached. Nothing. The windows. I ran to the living room window overlooking J Street. It opened easily. Cool night air rushed in. I looked down. 4 stories. The fire escape was 15 feet to the right, too far to reach. But I could see people walking below, cars passing, normal life continuing while I was trapped. I screamed. Help. Someone help me. A woman walking her dog looked up. She stared directly at me, tilted her head, then kept walking. A car slowed, the driver's face turning toward my window. They smiled and drove on. Could they see me? Or could they see something else, something that looked like me but wasn't, waving normally, everything fine? Behind me, the wall's membrane split. Something wet and pale pushed through, a hand. No, not a hand. Too many fingers. Too long. The skin translucent enough to see the bones underneath, gray and hollow like coral. The hand felt along the wall, searching, then turned toward me. It had no eyes but I felt it looking. It pointed. One impossibly long finger extended, aimed at my chest, and a voice came from the wall, not from the hand, from the wall itself, from the paint and plaster and studs. Day 178. You're right now. I grabbed my phone and called 911. It rang. And rang. And rang. No answer. I tried texting my sister. The message wouldn't send. No service, the screen said, even though I had full bars. I opened my camera and took a photo of the hand emerging from the wall. The photo showed an empty wall. No hand. No split membrane. Just normal paint. But when I looked up, it was still there, reaching, stretching further into the room. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and brought it down on the pale hand. The blade passed through like cutting smoke. The hand didn't react. It just kept reaching, patient, until its fingers brushed my arm. The touch was ice cold and electric. Every nerve in my body seized. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Could only watch as the hand wrapped around my wrist and began to pull. I was being dragged toward the wall. My feet scraped against the hardwood, heels digging trenches. The membrane stretched toward me now, reaching back, and I could see beyond it into the space between walls, not empty, not hollow, but full. Full of bodies. 12 of them. Pressed flat against the inside of the walls like insects in amber, their faces against the membrane, mouths open in silent screams, eyes empty and staring. Rebecca Flores was there. I recognized her from the license photo. Her face was inches from the membrane, flattened against it, one hand pressed palm out like she was pushing on glass. Her lips moved, run, can't run, too late, day 178, day 178, day. I grabbed the doorframe with my free hand and held on. The pulling intensified. My shoulder screamed. Something in my wrist popped. The hand tightened, fingers wrapping around my arm multiple times like a snake, pulling. My grip on the doorframe started to slip. My fingers went numb. Then, from apartment 4A, gospel music. Loud. Mrs. Alvarez's Sunday morning routine, but it was Thursday night. The music poured through the walls and the hand recoiled, releasing me. I fell backward, gasping. The hand retreated into the wall, the membrane sealed, and the wall looked normal again. But I could still hear them, the 12 voices, muffled now, angry. So close, almost had you, day 178 not over yet, midnight coming, midnight is when. I looked at my phone. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until day 179. 13 minutes until, what? What happened at midnight? I pressed my ear to the door and listened. In the hallway, I heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Accompanied by a wet dragging sound, like something massive being pulled across carpet. The footsteps stopped outside my door. A shadow appeared in the gap beneath, too wide, too dark, blocking all light from the hallway. A knock. 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. A voice from the other side, deep and hollow, rents due. It wasn't Mr. Chen. It was something using his voice like a costume. The doorknob began to turn even though I'd locked it. I backed away. The deadbolt disengaged on its own with a metallic click. The chain slid free. The door began to open, slow and inevitable, and through the widening gap I saw it, the thing wearing Mr. Chen's face like a mask, the skin hanging loose, the eyes wrong, too large, too reflective, like an animal's eyes caught in headlights. Behind it, the hallway was wrong. Not the same hallway I'd walked through 1,000 times. This hallway was longer, darker, lined with doors that shouldn't exist. And from behind each door, I heard scratching. Whispering. The sound of people who'd been waiting a very long time. The Chen thing stepped inside my apartment. Its joints bent backward as it moved, each step accompanied by a wet cracking sound. It smiled with too many teeth. Day 178, it said in that hollow voice. The seeing day. The day we see if you're ready. And you are. So very ready. It reached for me with hands that had too many knuckles, fingers that bent in too many directions. I ran to the window and climbed onto the sill. 4 stories down. Maybe I'd survive. Maybe I wouldn't. But I knew with absolute certainty what would happen if I stayed. I jumped that I didn't fall. My body dropped through the window frame and stopped 6 inches into empty air, suspended like a puppet on invisible strings. I hung there, legs dangling, arms windmilling, looking down at the sidewalk 40 feet below that I couldn't reach. The air itself had solidified around me, holding me in place with the grip of something massive and patient. Have you ever tried to scream and realized your lungs won't fill? That was me, frozen mid-jump, watching my shadow stretch impossibly long across the pavement below. Behind me, the chin thing laughed, a sound like gravel scraping down a metal slide. The building doesn't let go, it said. Not after day 178. Your property now. Owned. Part of the collection. I felt its too-many-fingered hand wrap around my ankle and pull. I slid backward through the impossible air, dragged back through the window into apartment 4B like a fish being reeled in. My body hit the floor hard. The thing stood over me, still wearing Mr. Chen's face but not bothering to move his mouth when it spoke anymore. The voice came from somewhere behind the mask, deeper inside. Let me show you what happens at midnight. It gestured toward the wall where the 12 faces had been pressed against the membrane. The wall began to ripple like disturbed water, and one by one, figures stepped through. Not walked. Stepped. Emerging fully formed from the solid surface. 12 people. 12 former tenants. They looked almost normal at first glance, dressed in clothes from different eras, different styles. But their eyes were wrong. Empty sockets that leaked something dark. Their mouths moved constantly, whispers pouring out without pause. And their bodies flickered like old film, occasionally revealing what they really were underneath, hollow. Just skin wrapped around nothing, animated by something that wasn't life. Rebecca Flores was first. She looked at me with those leaking empty eyes and said, "I'm sorry. We're all sorry. But we're so hungry. And every 6 months, we get to feed." The others nodded, a chorus of agreement, and they began to circle me. One of them, a man in a 1990s business suit, knelt beside me. His breath smelled like sealed rooms and forgotten things. "It doesn't hurt," he whispered. "Not after the first minute. Then you're just hollow. Empty. And empty is so much better than feeling." I tried to crawl away but my body wouldn't respond. Something was wrong with my limbs, they felt distant, disconnected, like I was operating them through thick gloves. The chin thing checked its watch. Not a real watch. Its wrist simply opened like a mouth and displayed the time in glowing numbers carved into its flesh, 11:54 p.m. 6 minutes, it announced. Then the feast begins. Then you join the walls and we find tenant number 14. The cycle continues. The building eats well. It gestured broadly at the apartment. Do you know what this place really is? Not an apartment. A stomach. A digestive tract. Every 6 months it processes a meal. Breaks them down. Absorbs them. And we, it indicated the 12 former tenants, we are the enzymes. We help digest. We get to feed on the fear, the despair, the delicious moment when hope dies. And in return, we exist. Not alive, but not gone. Held forever in the walls, waiting for the next feeding. One of the figures, a young woman who looked like she'd been a college student, band shirt and ripped jeans, sat down next to me. "I tried to fight too," she said softly. "On my day 178, I called everyone I knew. I posted on social media that I was in danger. But when people came to check on me, they saw an empty apartment. The building hid me. To everyone outside, I just moved away. No one filed a missing person report because I texted them that I was fine. Except I didn't send those texts. It did." She pointed at the chin thing. "We send the texts," the chin thing corrected. "We answer the phone calls. We maintain the illusion. The building protects its feeding process. After midnight tonight, you'll text your sister that you found a great job in Sacramento and had to move quickly. You'll update your social media with photos from a new apartment, not real photos, just convincing ones. And in 2 weeks, no one will wonder where you really are. Because as far as the world knows, you simply moved on. 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes. I could feel my phone vibrating in my pocket, probably my sister texting good night, having no idea this might be the last time. I wanted to answer. To say goodbye. To warn her never to rent an apartment without researching its history. But my arms still wouldn't move. The 12 former tenants began to change. Their flickering intensified. The hollow spaces inside them became visible, you could see straight through their torsos to the wall behind them. Their whispers synchronized into a single word repeated over and over. Hungry, 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 feed, 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 midnight, midnight, midnight. 11:58 p.m. The walls began to breathe. In and out, the room expanding and contracting like lungs. The floor beneath me grew warm and wet. When I looked down, the hardwood was transforming into something organic, ridged and pink and pulsing. The apartment was showing its true form. Not a room. A throat. 11:59 p.m. The Chinthing's face split open vertically, revealing the truth underneath. No face at all, just an opening filled with rows of inward-facing teeth and a darkness so complete it hurt to look at. 30 seconds, it said, the voice now coming from that impossible throat. Any last words? I managed to move my lips. Fuck. You. It laughed. They all say something similar. It reached for my chest with both hands, fingers spreading wide, preparing to grasp something inside me that wasn't physical. At midnight, we take your essence. Yourself. Your soul, if you believe in that. The body gets absorbed into the walls. But the you, the thinking, feeling part, that gets shared among us. Distributed. You'll be in all 12 of us, experiencing everything we experience, forever aware but unable to control. You'll watch as we do this to tenant 14. And 15. And the gospel music from 4A suddenly exploded in volume. So loud the walls shook. So loud I felt it in my teeth. The Chinthing recoiled, clutching the sides of its split face. The 12 former tenants stumbled backward, their forms destabilizing. And Mrs. Alvarez's voice cut through the music, clear and commanding, not this one. Not tonight. The door to my apartment exploded inward and Mrs. Alvarez stood in the doorway holding something I didn't recognize at first, a book, ancient and leather-bound, covered in symbols that seemed to move across its surface. Her eyes glowed with a light that wasn't natural. She spoke in a language I'd never heard but somehow understood in my bones. The cycle breaks. The feeding ends. The building starves. Midnight struck. And everything went white. When the light faded, I was on the floor of my apartment gasping like I'd been underwater for hours. Mrs. Alvarez stood over me, the glowing book still open in her hands, its pages turning themselves in a wind that came from nowhere. The Chinthing was on its knees, its split face writhing, the teeth-filled throat vomiting something black and viscous onto the floor that sizzled like acid. The 12 former tenants were scattered around the room, their hollow forms flickering rapidly between visible and invisible. You stupid old woman, the Chinthing hissed. The pact is sealed. The building must feed. You cannot break. The pact required willing occupancy, Mrs. Alvarez said calmly, still reading from the moving pages. Tenants must choose to stay past day 178. But you've been manipulating them. Trapping them. That violates the original agreement made in 1952 when this building was raised. She looked at me. Stand up, child. And say it clearly, I do not consent to stay. I forced my legs to work, pushed myself upright, and shouted with everything I had left, I do not consent to stay. The building screamed. Not through the Chinthing, not through the former tenants. The entire structure screamed, walls, floor, ceiling, pipes, wiring, all of it vibrating with rage and pain. The organic transformation reversed rapidly. The throat-like floor became hardwood again. The breathing walls solidified. The membrane where faces had pressed became simple paint and plaster. The Chinthing lunged at Mrs. Alvarez, its too many fingered hands reaching for the book. She snapped it shut and the movement created a shockwave that sent the creature flying backward through the wall, through the membrane, into the space between. Its scream echoed as it fell into wherever that place really was. The 12 former tenants stopped flickering. For the first time since emerging from the walls, they looked solid. Real. Rebecca Flores stepped forward, tears streaming from eyes that were no longer empty. "We can leave." Her voice was small, disbelieving. "We can actually leave." "The pact is broken," Mrs. Alvarez said. "The building has no power over you anymore. You're free." She looked at each of them in turn. "But you must go now. Before it tries to repair what's been undone. Before it finds a loophole." One by one, the 12 walked to the door. Some ran. Some moved slowly, like they'd forgotten how legs worked. They filed out into the hallway, the normal hallway now, no extra doors, no impossible length, and headed toward the stairs. Rebecca was the last to leave. She stopped at the threshold and looked back at me. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she was gone. I turned to Mrs. Alvarez. "What are you?" She smiled, tired but genuine. "Someone who made a different deal a long time ago. In 1987, when I moved into 3B, the building tried to claim me too. But I had protection, knowledge, preparation, faith. I bound myself to apartment 3B as a guardian. I can't leave, but I can protect others. I've been waiting 38 years for someone in 4B to survive long enough for me to intervene properly. The building's magic is strongest between days 178 and 180. But if the tenant refuses consent on midnight of day 178, the whole structure becomes vulnerable. You gave me the opening I needed. What happens now? Now you leave. Tonight. Take nothing but yourself. The building will try to keep you with memories, with attachments, with excuses. It will make you think you can stay just one more day, just one more hour. Don't listen. Walk out that door and never come back. What about you?" Her smile turned sad. "I made my choice. I stay. I guard. I wait for the next tenant who needs saving. Maybe in another 38 years, there will be another day 178. She handed me a card with a phone number. "Call this tomorrow. The woman who answers knows about places like this. She'll help you find safe housing. And she'll make sure no one else moves into 4B. I took the card. My hands were shaking. The 12 people who left, will they be okay? I don't know. They've been part of the building for so long. Years. Decades. The world they left doesn't exist anymore. But at least they have a chance now. That's more than they had at 11:59 p.m. I walked to the door, then stopped. What's the building really? Where did it come from? Mrs. Alvarez looked at the walls with something like pity. In 1952, a developer named Richard Sutton wanted to build the tallest apartment complex in Modesto. But the land was cursed, an old burial ground, though not Native American like the movies always show. Older. Something from before. Sutton didn't care. He made a deal with what lived in the ground. It would let him build, and in return, every 6 months it would get to feed one tenant. One soul. The building would attract them, trap them, consume them. Sutton thought he was clever. Thought he could control it. He was the first meal. And it's been feeding ever since. Every 6 months for 73 years. That's 146 people absorbed into these walls. You would have been 147. But now the pact is broken. The building will starve. It might take years, but eventually it will collapse. Until then, it will sit here, empty, hungry, waiting for someone foolish enough to ignore the warnings. I nodded. There was nothing else to say. I walked out of apartment 4B for the last time, down the stairs, through the lobby, and out onto J Street. The cool night air hit my face and I started crying. I was free. I was alive. I kept walking until my legs gave out 3 blocks away, and I sat on the curb and called my sister. "Can I stay with you tonight?" I asked when she answered. "I'll explain everything tomorrow. I need to not be alone right now." "Of course," she said. Are you okay? You sound. I'm alive, I interrupted. That's enough for now. I looked back toward the building one last time. From this distance, it looked normal. Just another apartment complex. But I could see apartment 4B's window, and in that window, a shape. Watching. Waiting. Already planning for tenant 14. If you ever see a listing for 847 J Street, apartment 4B, Modesto, California, with rent suspiciously below market value, do yourself a favor, keep scrolling. I stayed with my sister for 2 weeks. I didn't tell her the truth, how could I? Instead, I said there was a gas leak, that the building wasn't safe, that I'd broken my lease early. She believed me because she wanted to, because the alternative was her brother losing his mind. But at night, when I closed my eyes, I saw them. The 12 faces pressed against the membrane. Rebecca Flores reaching toward me. The chin thing's split face and its throat full of teeth. On day 15, I called the number Mrs. Alvarez had given me. A woman answered on the third ring. Her voice was professional, clipped. Clearwater Solutions. You were given this number by a guardian? Yes. Mrs. Alvarez. From the building on J Street. A pause. Keys clicking on a keyboard. Apartment 4B. Day 178. Congratulations on surviving. My name is Diana. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer truthfully. Did you sign anything besides the standard lease agreement? No. Did you accept any gifts from the landlord or property manager? Food, furniture, personal items? No. Nothing. Good. That makes this easier. The building has no legal claim on you. However, it may still attempt contact. Strange phone calls. Unexpected visits from former neighbors. Items from apartment 4B appearing in your current location. Do not engage. Do not accept. Do not return for any reason, even if the building claims you left something valuable. Whatever you left behind is not worth the price of retrieval. Do you understand? Yes. Excellent. I'm emailing you a list of verified safe housing in the Central Valley. Every property on this list has been investigated and cleared. No curses, no pacts, no feeding schedules. You'll need to move within the next 30 days. The building's influence weakens with distance, but it can reach about 50 miles if you maintain any emotional attachment. Cut all ties. Don't look at photos of apartment 4B. Don't think about happy memories from there. Grieve the violation and move forward. What about the other 12? The ones who got out? Another pause. Longer this time. We've located 9 of them. They're alive but adjusting. 73 years compressed into 6 months of perceived time does things to a person. One woman thought it was still 1994. Another man couldn't understand cell phones. We're providing support, but it's complicated. 3 we haven't found yet. They may have chosen to disappear. After what they experienced, some people prefer to be ghosts in the real world rather than risk being found by something worse. And Mrs. Alvarez? Still in place. Still guarding. She knew the cost when she made her choice. We check on her monthly. She's persistent. Diana's voice softened slightly. She saved you. Most people don't survive day 178. The fact that you're on this phone call means you got lucky. Don't waste that luck. I moved to Sacramento 31 days later. Found a studio apartment in a building from 2015, new construction, no history, exactly 0 mysterious deaths in the records. I got a different job, made new friends, started therapy with a counselor who specialized in trauma. I didn't tell her about the building. I just said I'd escaped an abusive situation, which was technically true. Life returned to something like normal. Months passed. Then a year. I started to believe I was safe. That it was over. That the building had forgotten me. Then, on a Tuesday in October, I received a package. No return address. Just my name and my new address in Sacramento written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a coffee mug. My coffee mug. The one I'd left on the counter in apartment 4B the night I escaped. Still unwashed. Still half full of coffee that should have been 14 months old but looked fresh, steam rising from the surface. Taped to the bottom was a note in that same unfamiliar handwriting: "You left something behind. Come back and get it. We saved your room. Management." I dropped the mug. It shattered on my kitchen floor, coffee spreading across the tile in a pattern that looked almost like letters, like a message forming in the liquid: "Feed, feed, feed." I called Diana immediately. She answered before the first ring finished. "It found you." "How did it?" "It doesn't matter how. What matters is what you do next. Do not respond. Do not go back. And most importantly, do not accept anything else it sends." The mug was a test. If you'd drunk from it, you would have re-established the connection. Throw away the pieces. Use salt. Burn them if you can. But if it knows where I am, it knows because you left something with emotional attachment behind. The mug. You used it every morning. You loved it. That created a thread it could follow. Are there other objects from 4B in your possession? Anything at all? I thought hard. No. I left everything. I only took my clothes and my laptop, and I stopped. My laptop. I'd been using it for 2 years before moving to 4B. But it had been in the apartment for 6 months. Had that created an attachment? What? Diana's voice was sharp. My laptop. Do I need to get rid of it? No. Electronics are usually safe unless the building's entity directly touched them. But check your files. Sometimes they leave messages hidden in documents. Corrupted files that look like data errors but are actually attempts to communicate. Delete anything suspicious. And for the next 72 hours, stay vigilant. If you receive another package, if you see anyone from the building, if you have dreams about apartment 4B, call me immediately. Day or night. For 72 hours, I barely slept. Every sound was the building coming for me. Every shadow was the chin thing wearing a new face. But nothing happened. No packages. No visits. No dreams. On hour 73, Diana called me. You're clear. The building made its attempt and failed. It will likely leave you alone now. You're not worth the energy expenditure. But stay alert. And whatever you do, don't go back to Modesto. Not for family. Not for friends. Not for any reason. The city is the building's territory. It has more influence there. I've kept that advice for 3 years now. I haven't been back to Modesto. When my sister asks why I won't visit, I make excuses. Work. Health. Money. She stopped asking. Maybe she knows I'm lying. Maybe she's okay with the lie. Sometimes, late at night, I check the rental listings for 847 J Street. Apartment 4B is always available. Always the same price. Always with suspiciously good photos and a landlord who's eager to show it. The reviews are glowing, 4 and 5 stars, people saying it's the best place they've ever lived. But if you read carefully, you notice something. Every positive review is dated within the first 3 months of tenancy. After that, silence. And if you dig deeper, if you cross-reference names with social media, you find accounts that stop updating around month 6. People who just vanish from the internet. The building is still feeding. Still hungry. Still waiting for tenant 14, 15, 16. And Mrs. Alvarez is still guarding, I hope. Still there in 3B, playing her gospel music, watching for the next person who needs saving. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. 3 years and 4 months after I escaped apartment 4B, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Diana had trained me well, but something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe fate. Maybe the building pulling strings I couldn't see. Hello. My voice was cautious. Silence on the other end. Not empty silence. The kind of silence that's full of breathing, of someone deciding whether to speak. Then, is this the person who lived in apartment 4B? The one who survived day 178? My blood went cold. Who is this? My name is Marcus. I moved into 4B 8 days ago. I found something. His voice was shaking. Behind the bathroom mirror. Driver's licenses. 13 of them. And a note. It says, if you find this, call this number. He can help. This is that number. I sat down heavily. How did you get my number? It was written on the back of one of the licenses. Your name. Your number. And a message, warn them. He paused. What am I supposed to be warned about? I wanted to hang up. I wanted to pretend I'd never received this call. But I remembered